At the World Economic Forum at Davos, we've been speaking to policymakers, global tech gurus, but what do Indian corporates make of all the change that's being unleashed by the age of artificial intelligence? To talk about this, I'm joined by Rishad Premji of Wipro, one of the sharpest minds in the Indian tech space. Thank you very much, Rishad. It's always a delight to speak to you.
Good to see you again, Rahul, as always.
We've been hearing so much from all the tech gurus on what they expect AI will bring in 2026. From your lens at Wipro, what are the kind of things you're building up for and you're expecting will happen over the next 12 months?
Look, a couple of things, Rahul. One, I certainly see 26 being a year where organizations, enterprises, customers that we serve moving more and more from a piloting vantage point to more of a scaling vantage point, productionizing vantage point. I think that's one big thing that you clearly see happening. The intent to leverage AI to drive disruption in the way you serve your own business as well as your end customers is dramatically changing. I think the language models we have today are able to solve scaled business use cases. The thing that they struggle with is they don't have enough context, they don't have enough domain, they have no in-depth understanding of the workflow of the particular organization. And that implicitly starts with data being well organized and well curated. So there's a huge opportunity as to how do you infuse specific context and specific domain and specific workflow understanding of organizations into that to make it relevant to really drive production scale. So I find that presents a huge opportunity for companies. There's so much money being spent on infrastructure, all the conversation about the infrastructure spend that's happening both in many markets. There's conversations about it happening in India and happening in Europe. But ultimately, somebody has to drive consumption of that infrastructure to drive returns for organizations. And I think the technology services companies from India have a huge chance to play to help drive that adoption by helping enterprises sort of make use of these technologies on scale.
That's one approach, which is what you and a lot of the other Indian tech behemoths have gone for, which is to work on the application layer, build out use cases. I want to ask a more fundamental question. Why would someone like you, given the kind of tech wherewithal you have, the kind of brains you have within your organization, not try and attack the more foundational level? Why is it that India hasn't produced a DeepSeek moment of its own? Why are we trying to build apps rather than try and do something more foundational?
No, I think you've got to figure out where you're playing in the stack and where your value add comes as a company, as a country, and that's how you focus on. I mean, today there's been an enormous amount of spend on the foundational models. It doesn't make sense for companies like us, with the cost of building those kinds of models, to replicate that. The value is in how do you specialize those models.
For a second to ask just this. That if everyone like you in India takes the same approach, or most people take the same approach, especially the ones who've got the cash flows to be able to invest, then where does India produce the kind of breakthrough technology that's coming out of Silicon Valley or now even out of China?
But I'm saying, how do you sort of channelize the value that's coming out? So the value is in building highly specialized small language models. We had a conversation yesterday, where you can build models that are 50 billion parameters and can do effectively 95% of the work that most large language models can do. So you can be highly specialized. There's a huge opportunity for enterprises to be building highly specialized small language models. There's an opportunity for countries like India. I think we should be focusing tremendously on building small language, highly specialized models on areas of importance: healthcare, education, agriculture, governance. Right? So there's a huge play in just driving that specialization, multilingual models. Right? We have a huge opportunity to serve many, many different languages in our country. And so we as a company should focus on where our strengths lie. And our strengths lie in talent on scale. And that talent on scale can help drive both curation of data, fine-tuning of models, building out use cases, orchestrating agents, managing those use cases. And there's a huge opportunity to bring the technology to life inside of large enterprises. I find we oftentimes get hugely focused on building out of the technology. The magic is in the implementation of the technology. And that's why I also say sometimes that any technological change is actually wonderful for services companies, because you have to now make it real to create value inside of organizations.
Just as you were coming in, Jensen from NVIDIA was right outside the tent where we are. And when he was speaking at his session at the World Economic Forum, he again made the point about the need for countries to build out their own AI. The fact that data sovereignty is a real challenge, the fact that you want your intelligence to be captured in your AI models. Stepping out of your corporate lens and just looking at it as a country, What do you make of the approach that we've taken on AI in trying to build out some of this infrastructure which will be required for the next several years from now?
No, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for us to be playing across different elements of the stack. We'll also have to decide where we invest more versus invest less. You can't invest arguably equally in each of the layers of the stack. As I was saying earlier, I think there's a huge opportunity for India to build highly specialized small language models, right, in areas of expertise that we want to build. There's a huge opportunity to build multilingual models, as I said. There's a huge opportunity for India to become the sort of scaled deployment engine for the world. There's a huge opportunity for India to build talent for AI in the world. That's one of the biggest challenges today. We don't have enough talent that is AI ready. And how do we think about that?
One of the things that became a big debate here is whether India's missed the AI bus. So a couple of the commentators globally said India's missed the AI bus. The Indian IT minister took umbrage to it and tried to say that we're the third AI power. Are we really an AI power, or are we just trying to play catch up?
Well, the AI bus is still very early, right? A lot of the investments have happened in the infrastructure layer. They haven't happened in the adoption layer. That journey is a journey that's going to unfold over the next 5, 7, 10 years. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us as companies and us as a country to participate in that journey. So I don't believe at all that we have missed the bus. And I think the bus is very much in very sort of starting mode, and we can catch up and jump onto that bus quite easily without falling down.
There have been so many reports in the media about job layoffs at different IT companies. How are you looking at the issue of displacement? To what percentage of your workforce do you think could be impacted because of the integration of AI technologies, and what are you doing to try and upscale?
So, Rahul, first of all, you look at most technology services companies, none of us really have had much of a decline in people. And if you look at most of us over the last several years, we've actually added some people. So this myth or this view that there has been downscaling because of AI, just factually in numbers, hasn't played out as an industry, right? That's point number one. Point number two is we've got to think about jobs in, I think, 3 buckets, or maybe 4 buckets, right? One is jobs that will get disrupted because of AI, and we have to accept that those jobs will get disrupted. Bucket number 2 is jobs that will get enhanced by AI. So you work with machine and humans to drive that impactfully. 3 jobs that will get created because of AI, and 4 will be human-only jobs. And we've got to think about in those buckets. And how do we think about bucket 1, which is jobs that get disrupted, and how do we retrain, repurpose those people through the right skilling, through the right opportunities to move into bucket 2 and 3? I think the biggest challenge today is really how do you get people to adopt the technology. And I think the people that are most at risk are people who are not going to adopt the technology. And I think it's a responsibility of organizations, it's a responsibility of industry, it's a responsibility of government to really give people the comfort that this change is important, and the new, AI fluency is the new digital currency. You have to be AI fluent to be relevant to do any kind of job going forward. And so how do we help people build those skills, but also help take them on the change journey to say, hey, look, do this and you still have a future. Disrupt what you're doing today and you still have a future, because if you don't, the system will beat you anyways, right? And you will get left behind. So join the journey of change, be on the bus of change.
Jamie Lyman said something very similar along the lines of what you're saying, that the change is here. Either you adopt it or you just get left behind because you can't dig your head in the sand. I want to ask you about something that I heard from the folks at NVIDIA, which is about task and purpose. That their idea is that if you're performing a task, then that task can just get appended and you may not have a job. But if your job has some purpose, if there's some purpose to what you're doing, then you have some perpetuity value and a longer runway. How would you look at all of those who are wondering whether their jobs are in danger, not in danger? How are you wrapping your head around this very existential question?
I mean, look, if you think about jobs are a set of tasks. Some tasks are highly automatable, some tasks require more thinking, some tasks have an ability to sort of be doing it more efficiently because you can combine with technology to drive it more impactfully. And the way to think about it is there are jobs that have 60-70% of tasks that can be highly automated, then perhaps those jobs have a shorter run life than other jobs that have less of highly automatable elements. And that's the way I would think about it, and that's the way we think about it.
You've got young children. I saw them at the cricket match. How are you trying to train them for the world ahead? Because you also have the benefit of insights which others who may be watching at this time don't. Given that kids can now do homework by just typing their query into ChatGPT, how are you trying to build analytics?
I'm a big believer in the arts. I'm a product of a liberal arts education, and I'm a big believer in the arts. I'm a big believer in the mindset of just thinking out of the box, a whole strong mindset of learnability, no fixed mindset, and that's the thing that I encourage. It's very difficult to predict what jobs will look like in the future. It's very difficult to predict sort of what the world looks like, given the amount of uncertainty we're living through looks like in the future. But just the ability to learn, the ability to have no fixed mindset, and to have a very sort of out-of-the-box thinking ability, which I think the arts brings you as well.
We're just hearing from our producers that the choppers that are coming in are likely Donald Trump's choppers. He just took off from Zurich a while before now. He'll be in Davos soon. Given the reliance that you've had on revenue generated in the United States, how is this turbulence impacting business planning and execution?
Look, I will tell you a couple of things. One is customers are making decisions, and customers are moving ahead with business because there's opportunity, and we find that mindset continue, right? There was perhaps a little bit of a hiccup back in April, May last year when the whole trade discussion unfolded, but I think customers have now learned to move forward knowing that this may be more uncertain than they had planned for. So that's one. Two is the other conversation you may allude to is the situation on visas and immigration, right? And the reality is all of us are navigating that by leveraging the talent we already have, focusing more and more on local employment and local hiring. We are today almost 80% local in terms of all the talent we have in the US. So we're not as concerned about that. And we're also focused on building talent locally everywhere in the world like we have done in India for so many years of the past.
But what about the psyche of those who are caught in this trap, right? The uncertainty just before you get your permanent citizenship, now after having worked for a while, now not knowing what happens. Are you as a company trying to help those, whether your employees or even in the sector, try and grapple with that situation?
No, we're certainly giving them comfort. We're certainly advising them what are the smart things to do. But it's not a broad-based stress that people are feeling about the uncertainty of their job. They certainly are just focused heads down on delivering.
So let's come back to what you were talking about, building the application layer. There, where do you think, apart from just going company by company and seeing what you can build out, are there any sectors where you think Indian companies have a particular advantage that they can play on?
No, I think the advantage comes, Rahul, by the specific companies you understand, the specific processes of those companies you understand, more broadly the industries you understand. And so we as an industry cover virtually every sort of domain, every industry more broadly. And so the opportunity is across the board. The magic happens in the context of understanding the industry and then understanding the specific company. And that's why it's very interesting. You think about BPO companies. And one argument becomes, BPO companies can get disrupted faster. I think the value of BPO companies is they're so entrenched in the process, they're so entrenched in the workflow, that the value that they bring to be able to bring in and enhance those processes by leveraging AI is unique because they understand what's actually going on inside of the company.
In the next few weeks, some Indian language models are coming, like Indian LLMs are coming out. How hopeful are you about the prospects of them making a mark in the Indian context and maybe even the global context as well?
We'll find out, Rahul. I don't know well enough, but these are some smart people doing building these things out. So I'm quite hopeful that they will be, of world standards, and let's see where that goes from there. It's a great start for us as a country as well, as you alluded to earlier.
So the government's made a lot of effort on trying to build out a semiconductor ecosystem in India. Given all the volatility that's playing itself out between China and the United States at this moment, how important do you think it is for India to be able to achieve some form of self-reliance when it comes to semiconductors, even if they aren't the latest in semiconductors, but at least a couple of generations back? And how do you see that play out in the Indian context right now?
Look, I think the thinking on sovereignty is a wise one. In a world that's more fractured, it's more confused, I think it's a wise one. And I think the fact that we're focusing on all 5 layers of the stack, as has been discussed as a country, is smart. Right? I also, as I said earlier, we'll have to think through where do we invest more and where do we invest less, because being equally invested across the stack may not make sense. And I'm a big believer in how we can drive scale adoption on the application layer, with a huge opportunity leveraging our talent base as a country.
Well, I just hear the protesters getting louder. The Trump choppers just landed. So let's see what what message havoc Donald Trump intends to bring to Davos. Thank you very much.
Good.
Rishad,
always good to see you, Rahul.
Fantastic.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much.
Take
Thank you.
care.
You're joining the Trump session as well?
I am going to try and join that for a little bit.
Great. Thank
Good.
you.
Take care.